Mike. What an incredible fortnight at the US Open. What a great guest we have to join us to recap it all. Mike Cation, amazing to see you, and glad to have you back on the podcast to look back on Flushing Meadows.
It was quite an experience because we got a full 3 weeks here in New York.
That's crazy, Mike. You deserve a well-earned vacation, especially because we saw you prior to New York here in Toronto for the National Bank Open. So, my God, man, take your time after this interview and just, unplug from the tennis world if you can for a bit.
I think I've got 2 weeks before we go to Las Vegas for a challenger. So the grind never stops. We keep chasing the sun.
Yeah, you keep chasing the sun, and look, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner keep chasing these major titles, and that's obviously the big takeaway and the big storyline from Sunday. We expected this chapter to happen once again. I think everyone sort of circled it before we looked at the draw and thought, could anybody sort of shake this up? But no surprise that they meet in another final. Carlos Alcaraz, your reaction to just not only the brilliance in the final today, but just his brilliance overall these past 2 weeks. I don't think I've ever seen him play this solid, this well-rounded for such a long stretch of time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've only broken 3 times the entire event. Yeah, it's absurd. We certainly knew when you saw him, obviously in Cincinnati, saw him in the first few rounds, and he was talking the talk about how much the serve has improved, and also just that idea that the consistency from him it was that point of focus since Wimbledon. And it showed, right? I think when I showed up today, this morning to get ready for the final, I found myself thinking, okay, it's, maybe he just hasn't been pushed enough. Maybe he hasn't faced that one competitor. Even, you say Novak 2 days ago, but maybe he hasn't faced Jannik Sinner, so maybe it gets tested today. And it did a little bit, but really it was one bad game. He had one bad service game. He was broken at love in the second set. Outside of that, that might have been as even a level and a spectacular of a level as we've seen from Carlos. I called the match on US Open Radio with Jimmy Arias, and both of us just kept thinking, where's the drama here? which I hate to say. You certainly, you think back to Roland Garros, obviously, and it just felt from start to finish, even with that one bad game, Carlos was 2 steps ahead of Jannik at every moment. And that was fascinating to watch, because we had that idea of being a 50-50 split. It's how it's been the last 2 years for these two guys. But that was remarkable today. I never felt like Jannik was in it, even when it was split at a set apiece. I never felt that it was on Jannik's racket, which is absurd to think about, considering how easily he was able to roll through so many great opponents during this fortnight.
I think it surprised a lot of people, Mike, and it certainly surprised me. And maybe I was giving Sinner's 27-match win streak on hard courts at the majors a little bit too much, credence, I guess. But what was the vibe amongst media members? I mean, you've been there for 3 weeks, so you've been talking to all the big names and the media members, former players and people like that. What was the vibe heading into this match? Was it slightly leaning towards Sinner? Because that's sort of what I was feeling before today's match.
Yeah, no doubt. That's exactly how everybody felt. You took out that Cincy final, obviously, with Jannik being ill. That certainly, nobody had that on their mind. But I think the way that Jannik was able to get through Carlos on the grass at Wimbledon, that was the one that obviously everybody kind of points to, right? And the fact that obviously at Roland Garros, Jannik was a point away 3 times. From winning on what was Carlos's, in theory, preferred surface. So I think most of us felt it was going to be, a 50-50 slight edge towards Jannik. And especially on top of it, yes, Jannik lost twice to the Canadians. Shout out to Canada. A couple of sets there, but still felt like he was the dominant performer through, up until the final. Like, I thought, and I know we'll want to talk about it a little bit more, but I was courtside for the Felix match, and it felt like Felix had to go to his top level just to be competitive. And it's just like, even somebody as talented as Felix, that, one of the top, in my opinion, still top 10 players in the world when he's, performing well, still it had to be to that next level. And we just kept thinking, well, there'll be Carlos have these little dips at some point. And then today it was just like that was one-way traffic the entire time.
No dips, no dips. And,
dips.
we'll certainly get to Felix with you a little bit later on because, agreed, he was playing some of his top level tennis, reminding us what he can do when he's on like that and in the groove. I want to talk a little bit about this rivalry, this Sinner-Alcaraz rivalry, which, wow, now that's 2 complete calendar years where all the slams have been won by these two guys. And when you think back to it, it seems like forever ago now, maybe 2023, when Djokovic was so dominant at the majors. And now all of a sudden, just boom, like, I don't know if Father Time just caught up to Djokovic or what, or if these two guys, I think more so probably these two guys have just taken it to another level. But, how lucky are we to see the sport go from a 15-year rivalry, basically, of the big three, with Andy Murray sprinkled in there, now to go to these two guys who seem like they just don't want to share.
Yeah, it's first off, we do need to salute Novak because listen, I know it's the first question of his press conference after he lost to Carlos. That idea of like if you told anybody else with the 2 exceptions, if you told them you would get to Grand Slam semifinal each of those 4 events, every other player would take it in a heartbeat, right? Like that's
Yep.
phenomenal for, let's be frank, it's a part-time player now. Novak is a part-time player by choice. Incredible season. 4 Grand Slam semifinals is an incredible season. But I agree with you. These two have taken it to another level. It's been more fascinating. I think there's been much more discussion, to be honest with you two guys. Like the bigger discussion, I think, amongst the media members is who's going to be the next guy? Who's going to be the one that is the Novak to Roger and Rafa? Is Draper ever going to be healthy? Can Ben work on some of those things that we certainly know? The return component is his up and down level. Does Zverev still have one more push? The name I kept going back to, Felix. People still say, and I know when I talked to you guys 2 years ago, right after the men's final, I said I was a huge buyer of Felix Auger, and I still am. I still think his top level is as good as anyone outside of those 2 guys. But I think for the way this rivalry is just kind of continuing to grow, I think it's fantastic for a casual fan. To have, go back 30, 40 years, Chris Evert and Martina, what they did, just having that 1-2 back and forth is fantastic. For those of us who are a little bit more entrenched, I want to see that third person. I want to see the Novak to Roger and Rafa. And that's been the overarching question for a lot of us on the men's side. Who's going to be that guy? Is it somebody we haven't seen yet? Where will it come from? And who's going to push them? Because I will be very honest, while the tennis is off the charts good, I don't want to see it just be 2 guys for another 10 years, which is entirely possible the way they have separated themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's more interesting to have a third name in the mix contesting. Before we get also into Felix, just kind of looking into history here. Alcaraz, Sinner, and particularly Carlitos. I mean, I was digging into the numbers a little bit. Still 22 years old, and this is 6 major titles.
Yeah.
At the age of 22. And I don't know if we're glossing over this or not. I mean, not only that, splitting amongst 3 surfaces, multiple titles across grass, clay, hard courts.
So just
He's
the 4th
on a
guy to win 2 on each surface. 4th guy.
And, I believe he's reached 6 majors even sooner than Rafa did, sooner than Wilander, and just this pace he's on. I mean, he's on.
Borg's the only other one who's that young.
Wow. So you look at this current pace. I mean, is it foolish for me to say 24 is out of the question? Like, I don't think it is.
I don't think it's foolish. I'm one of those people that listen, you never know if an injury is going to come. I mean, think Dominic Thiem, he wasn't ever going to get to 24, but you can see how quickly it can go, right? Draper now starting to have this arm issue. Again, they're not on that same level, that same path, but you just never know. But I think it's absolutely within the realm of discussion for sure. For both of these guys, again, because of the way that they've separated themselves, the fact that you're seeing all of these incredible talents. I remember talking to Casper Ruud. I interviewed him in Dallas this year, so that's February. And he was so honest at that moment about the fact that he knows that it's these two guys and everybody else, and they've separated themselves. And this is a top, guy who got to number 2. And he's telling me, I have to play these indoor events because I need to figure out how to play on faster courts to keep up with them. I need to learn how to flatten out that incredible forehand with how heavy that ball is. He's like, I have to learn how to flatten out because the pace that these two guys are creating and generating is off the charts, and my shots won't be able to compete with them regularly. And that was the one moment where it opened my eyes. I mean, you see the results, we see it from a media perspective, but when somebody that good is telling me I have to completely adjust my game that has taken me to a top 5 position, what are you gonna do? Like that's so shocking to me.
Yeah, it tells me that it's not just a gap between these two guys and the rest. And when I say the rest, I'm not including Novak Djokovic, because
Sure.
sort of been there, done that, and he's
Yep.
still close. But it's not just a gap between the rest of the tour right now. It's a chasm. I mean, you watched that quarterfinal with Sinner and Musetti. Lorenzo's a brilliant player. He was completely obliterated off the court and had no answers whatsoever. If we do get to Felix for a moment,
Yeah.
like, he has a lot of arsenal in that serve and that forehand. He kind of delivered the performance I think, Mike, you and I have been waiting to see for a number of years, really.
They've been talking about it for a while.
A very long time, and we've seen flashes, we've seen glimpses. I always think back to that rounds of 16 French Open match with Rafa, where he fought him tooth and nail for 5 sets. He, to me, and maybe agree or not, his peak level tennis it's not Sinner Alcaraz level, but it's a little closer than some of the other guys.
Fully agree. I listen, I sat courtside for both actually his match with Sinner. I also sat courtside for his match against Zverev. So seeing it up close and personal, as you guys know, is a different beast than watching it on TV or even calling it from up top. The things that he can do and the amount of things that he can do is up there. It is, in my opinion, just what he can do. And again, I'm not talking about just consistency or anything like that. He probably has top 5 weaponry, in my opinion, in terms of his ability to be so good defensively, the weaponry offensively. He can do so many different things. The backhand felt so much more steady. It wasn't a weapon, but the errors were reduced. He was much more comfortable running around and getting to that forehand where he could do a lot more damage. What he did to Zverev was embarrassing for Sasha. Like that was like I was really blown away by how consistently through that 4-setter that Felix just dominated the proceedings. So I fully agree that is top 5 level, in my opinion, from Felix. And then it just goes back to that same question we've had for, unfortunately, too many years, right? Can you consistently do that over long stretches of time on the natural surfaces, not just indoors or at certain peaks? He has to have that long-term vision. He was in such a good mood. And one thing I kept talking about, guys, and I actually interviewed him after the Zverev match, it looked like Davis Cup Felix in terms of his engagement with the crowd. You know what I mean? Like he was actually using them. They were with him. And that's the thing, like you guys know it better than I do, but like when he's in Davis Cup and he's engaged and the crowd's going like, that is peak Felix. And we saw it here in New York, and not his home event or anything. And it was awesome to watch, just completely amazing to see him just like, yes, I'm going to do it. And he did it against Sinner, right? Had to. I loved it. I loved the fortnight for him. He was in such a good headspace, honestly, making jokes about his fitting coming up about, I guess, tomorrow, the wedding in a couple weeks. I was just so happy to see him in a great space and just want him to be able to continue doing it. And we'll see. I mean, that has been the question for so many years.
That was the big difference to me too, Mike, was just the engagement with the crowd and getting himself fired up. And
Yeah.
he almost strikes me at times as a little bit Sampras-like in terms of
Yes.
his I don't want to say disengagement, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yep.
Like not showing the emotions,
Right.
keeping it so dialed in. And I mean, I'm not comparing him with Sampras otherwise, because Sampras was world number one for how many years and all those slams and everything, and it certainly worked for him to be that way. But I feel like if Felix would just let loose a little bit, just show us some of that more often, that it would unlock another level of potential to him. Because, like you said, he's got the offense, he's got the defense, physically too. Just to speak about his physical fitness, I mean, every time he lifts his shirt up, I'm like, oh my god, that's a lot
Yeah.
of muscles, you know.
Yeah.
And he's got he's got the maturity too. Like he's got all those things, but if he just showed a little bit more of that fire.
I think the one that would probably be most apt, and again, different talent level, achievement level, whatever you want to say, is Federer, right? Federer was a master at that. He knew how to get the crowd engaged when he needed it, how it would work against his opponent, how it would work for him to motivate. So that's always the one I kind of point to for those guys who are a little bit more on the reserve side. Be like Federer. Use the crowd when you need it. Use the crowd, whether that be for yourself to, disengage your opponent. That's probably the pathway. But yeah, really positive signs for Felix in that regard. And again, like I said, hopefully that will continue to happen because he is somebody who can draw that crowd to him.
I also want to say I'm just super impressed that you remember your last chat with us, or maybe not your last one, but 2 years ago that you did say buy the Felix stock, because that's almost a direct quote. And with the amount of interviews you do and time you spend behind the microphone, how you remember that is beyond me. So kudos to you. You're sharp. You're
Because
sharp.
I don't make predictions like that very often, but like I'm such a believer. I genuinely am. I have been for a long time, and we as commentators, we have games that we're drawn to, right? We certainly like watching some players more than others, and Felix has always been so high on my list just because it's not a one-way type of a game. I mean, there's so much diversity to it, and I'm always drawn to those type of players.
Well, that's why we keep having you back on this podcast, Mike. So let's keep doing that. But my last question on the men's side before we move over to you, Ben, and maybe the women's side too shortly, but is about Djokovic, who you mentioned a little bit earlier, and just the fact that he's playing such a part-time schedule and really prioritizing the slams, which for obvious reasons, it's quite clear why he would do that. It's interesting to me because my favorite player growing up was Boris Becker. And he kind of did the reverse later in his career. He stopped playing the slams and was only playing smaller level tournaments, realizing that for him, best of three was far better than best of five. Can Djokovic do it? Can he get that 25th major? He's so close. But physically speaking, and just going up against these top two guys we've mentioned, I mean, you almost need them both to go out early or be taken out by an injury, maybe for him to achieve that, that remarkable feat that he's still chasing.
I'm never going to say never for Novak Djokovic. I've learned that too many times. I think we all have, right? With when it comes to Novak, he was pretty honest about it in his press conference after the loss to Carlos, saying, like at this moment, I can't compete with them best of five. He just can't. He's seen it through this year. I mean, obviously, when he was able to beat Carlos in Australia this year, that was one of those eye-opening matches, but obviously it just took a lot out of him and he wasn't able to keep going. The gold medal match last year, he has it in one or two opportunities in a fortnight. I don't think he could go through both of them. I just don't. I think it's possible still at this moment. If you'd have told me he beats Carlos this fortnight in that semifinal, I would believe you. If you told me he beats Carlos and then Jannik Sinner, I would say, no, I don't think that's accurate. I think he can beat one. I don't think he can beat two in an event at this stage. But that, again, still is such a remarkable achievement. Like, again,
who could?
One of the best years ever out there of somebody who hasn't made a Grand Slam final. I mean, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I want to touch on a couple of the other guys who I felt like they're getting closer and still can't break through that little barrier. And in this case, actually, it was Novak Djokovic who stopped Taylor Fritz. And it's painful to look at the head-to-head 0-11, and Fritz is, honest and transparent about that, and he's right. A handful of those matches did come when he was younger. He was not as evolved as a player. He didn't have the same tools that he has today. He can do a lot of great things on the court. You watch that match, I was like, if he doesn't beat him on this night where he's creating nonstop opportunities, it felt like he was actually outplaying Djokovic from the baseline through the bulk of the match. When is he ever going to do it? And you look at now the past couple of results for Fritz, very close to forcing a fifth set with Carlos Alcaraz at Wimbledon, and comes up short in the quarters here to Novak. How can he solve this riddle and kind of get one step further against one of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. And then I also think about that his loss to Ben in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, a couple of weeks before this here as well. I don't know. I feel like we're at that stage that I think a lot of players get to when they're inside the top, let's say 15, 10, whatever it may be, where they've made all this improvement and now they've just kind of been, Taylor's just kind of plateaued a little bit here. He's excellent. He's a consistent top 10 tour finals. I think there needs to be a little bit more to the game, a little bit more diversity to the game, right? I think everybody at this point knows how to beat him. I mean, it's shown. I think he is. I don't know. The point is, I don't know. And I don't know what it is that gets him to the next level. I mean, there could be more transition. Sure. Is that going to beat Jannik Sinner or Carlos Alcaraz? Probably not. I don't know what the next evolution for Taylor. Paul Annacone and Michael Russell just have done such a good job retooling themselves over the years, retooling his game. I don't know what gets him, though, to that next level, because I feel like he's kind of maxed out what he does. Yeah. So there has to be another weapon to it to add. And I'm not smart enough to know what that is. And I feel bad saying that, but I think he's exceptional. And these two other guys have just taken it to a different level, and Novak as well.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.